Hey guys, I'm excited to talk to you today about the health benefits of ancient grains. So many of you have probably heard it's becoming, I hate to use the word trendy because it's really not trendy, but more awareness, that's a much better word, is coming into light on the difference between modern wheat. Many people have gluten issues, right? We hear about gluten sensitivity and all of those types of things, how gluten is affecting a lot of people's bodies negatively with our modern wheat system. And then you hear mention of ancient grains. So what exactly is an ancient grain? Why and how are ancient grains different than their counterpart modern wheat? And what are the health benefits and that type of thing? So that's what we're going to be diving into today. And we're also going to be talking about grinding your own flour and then regular flour too, because not everybody is ready to take that step. But just so that you understand the differences in those and the health benefits with those different options. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. My name is Melissa K. Norris. I'm the author of The Made From Scratch Life, the host of the Pioneering Today podcast. Let's get to talking about what makes an ancient grain, what are ancient grains, and a little bit vice versa with the modern wheat. So an ancient grain, there's lots of different ancient grains. So what that means is it has not been changing or it's remained stable. It hasn't been hybridizing or, cross and having different changes for at least usually we say, a couple hundred years, even going back to thousands of years. So it's a more primitive form because it hasn't went through those hybridizations, which happen naturally over, thousands and hundreds of years. And of course is not a genetically modified crop either. So ancient grains, typically we're going to be talking about, especially with wheat, spelt, einkorn, emmer, those are terms, those are some grains that are classified as ancient grains. But even within those ancient grains, there are some that are more ancient than others. So as far as our science has down right now, the most primitive form of ancient grain, kind of like the ancient of ancient grains, is einkorn. So einkorn, when you go to it on a DNA level, einkorn is the most primitive. It has the least amount of chromosomes in compared even to spelt and then especially our modern wheat. It's actually closer to a grass. Einkorn is really cool because we go back and as far as we have with science and stuff now, it's the most primitive wheat that we've got in our modern world available to us today. And with many of the ancient grains, especially spelt and einkorn, they have a higher protein count, but they have a lower gluten count. For those people who have gluten sensitivities, this, for me personally, I had food testing done. And if I'm using regular modern flour and regular modern wheat, I am very sensitive to that and it really starts to affect my body and my health. But interestingly enough, I can use ancient grains and they don't affect me. And so a lot of people are finding that out. Now, if you have celiac disease, there is still gluten in the ancient grains. So I want to be very clear about that because sometimes there's a little bit of confusion on the differences there. But what's interesting is the gluten that's found in einkorn is actually a different type of gluten that's found in the other wheat. So only under the care of a physician, if you have celiac disease or really severe gluten sensitivities, would you want to go down the road of looking into trying that. So I want to be really clear again there, because if you have celiac disease, gluten can really be dangerous to your health, right? So anyways, that I found very interesting that it's actually a different type of gluten, but it has a lot less gluten. So there's some really interesting health benefits if you are just gluten sensitive to using the ancient grains. Plus, like we said, they've got those higher protein counts, which is better, more filling for us. And interestingly enough, with einkorn, so we know about phytic acid, right? So just real quick, if you're not familiar, phytic acid is what we kind of call as like an anti-nutrient. So it's why a lot of people recommend fermenting, doing sourdough or soaking or sprouting your grains, because that helps remove the phytic acid or break that phytic acid down. So then our bodies are actually able to use the nutrients, the vitamins and the minerals that are in the food and absorb them. So that's why we like to remove phytic acid. Well, einkorn actually has less, just naturally has less phytic acid than its modern counterparts or our modern wheat. So naturally our bodies are able to use the vitamins and the minerals and to digest it easier. It goes through our digestive system easier than the other ones. So I thought that was really, really interesting. So I wanted to share with you guys too, talking about food storage. Food storage right now, we are getting our summer garden going and replenishing our home food storage. This is the time of year where I look at my shelves and they're getting bare and I'm like, oh goodness. But wheat berries, I want to talk a little bit about the actual flour. So if you're grinding your own wheat berries, why you would even want to grind your own flour and the difference in that. So when we're talking about health benefits, there's actually quite a bit of health benefit to you if you grind your own flour. So we've got wheat berries here, and I wanted to share, these are, so this post and everything and is sponsored by Einkorn.com. And I'm really excited. They've got both the wheat berries. So when we call a wheat berry, it's actually a hard kernel. It is essentially it's the seed that we get from wheat. So that's kind of what those look like there. Sometimes that's a confusing terminology. People hear berry and you think something soft or dried squishy, but in regards to wheat berries, it's actually a hard kernel. So this is what gets ground up into flour when we're making flour. Now, einkorn is actually quite a bit smaller. That's another interesting thing too. The ancient grains typically are smaller. Einkorn's even smaller than spelt than you have with the modern wheat, which is one of the reasons that farmers have moved away from the ancient grains so much, is because they get a much larger yield, so they get more crop per acre and per plant when it's planted. But then you kind of miss out on the health benefits. So why would we want to grind your own flour? Kind of like, what's the benefits of grinding your own flour? Well, when it comes to food storage, a wheat berry, when stored properly, so of course, out of heat, out of direct sunlight, no moisture, that type of thing, wheat berries will store for years. So you can have, your buckets of these, and you're going to have wheat berries, and you're going to have shelf-stable product for years upon years. So for food storage purposes, that was one of the reasons I actually, years and years ago, when I started grinding my own flour, that I was beginning to look into wheat berries, because I wanted to have our home food storage for us at home that we could rely on. And flour, so once it's ground up, anytime we grind it up and air hits it, it begins to oxidize, which means it begins to lose its vitamins and its minerals relatively quickly once you've ground them up. But in order to make shelf-stable flour, so flour that you have purchased from the store, which Einkorn.com offers both the wheat berries and it's all certified organic, and then they also offer an Einkorn all-purpose flour, which comes already in these paper bags and ground up. So when you've got the flour that's already ground up, you have to remove the germ and the bran, which is the oils. And in the oils within a wheat berry, that is where most of the vitamins and the minerals, the nutrients are found. But those oils need to be removed because oil goes rancid, right? And so to make flour shelf stable, those are removed out. And then that's why on most bags of any type of flour that you purchase at the store, it says enriched. They have to put the vitamins back in, because we've stripped them out, right? But it does make a shelf-stable flour so that it can be shipped, and then you can purchase it and have it and it's ready to go. But then the shelf life of flour, a year, 6 months to a year usually on your already ground flour. So that's why for food storage and longevity purposes, a wheat berry is definitely the way to go. But then health-wise too, you have got a lot more vitamins and minerals that you're actually getting, plus more fiber and everything, because you've got all parts of the wheat berry in there when you grind your own flour at home. Is einkorn and ancient grains gluten-free? No, but they have lower amounts of gluten, and with einkorn specifically, it is a different type of gluten. It's actually not the same type of gluten that is found in modern wheat. So people with gluten sensitivities, often I happen to be one of those. I can have the ancient grains and it doesn't bother me. It does still contain some gluten, but it's a different type of gluten and it's at much lower levels. What's interesting with the wheat berries is you can grind them up into flour, right? Of course, but you can also add them to salads and soups and different dishes. And with the einkorn, what's really fun is in the show notes for this recipe, I've got a link to, you can actually pop these, right? So they're not going to make big things like popcorn, but you can pop them and then you can eat them as a snack. So then they're not as hard, because if you were to try to eat one of these right now, it's a hard kernel, right? So it's not very appetizing, but you can prepare them in different ways to add to your food that's not just only in the form of flour. So that's pretty cool too. With the wheat berries, that's one of the reasons that we started, but the health benefits, and you get a different flavor. It's a more robust flavor. I find there's just a better flavor. You get more flavor with the foods when you're using the fresh ground flour. And part of that is because you've got all of the oil, you have all the parts in there, right? But a lot of times when you begin cooking with fresh ground flour, it's a little bit different beast. And so a lot of people get a little bit frustrated because if you try to bake something, especially like bread products, and you try to use the flour just interchangeably in the same recipe, you're going to get very dense, hard as a rock bread products. So in the show notes, we have got tips there to help you. And that's because fresh ground flour absorbs liquid more than when you just got regular already ground up flour that's got all the stuff that's been removed for it. And so you have to use less liquid, and then you have to give it a resting period because it's going to absorb it. So you usually mix up your dough using less liquid and then come back to it in 10 minutes or so and then decide if you need to add more liquid or not. Because if you try to do it all at the beginning like you're used to doing if you're baking with regular all-purpose flour or even store-bought already ground up like whole wheat pastry flour, it's a little bit of a different beast. So we've got 8 tips for you in the show notes that'll kind of walk you through, specifically with einkorn too, because einkorn flour and these ancient grains, they have so much less gluten in them that the structure is very different and you have to treat it differently. You don't need it. There's some different tips and tricks in there so that you have success when you go to bake with it. So you can grab those in the show notes as well. So one of the cool things too is a lot of times when you look at all-purpose flour, it's got other types of flours added to it, and that's to make it so that the protein count and everything is considered all-purpose. Because for different products like cake flour and bread flour, you've got some different protein levels and things in there. So an all-purpose flour is just considered well-rounded, right, and can be used for all different types of baking, all-purpose, hence the name. But what's really great is with this Einkorn all-purpose flour from Einkorn.com, their all-purpose flour is basically, it is sifted einkorn wheat berries that have ground up. So it doesn't have things added into it like malted barley or other different types of flours. So this is just a straight einkorn flour that has been sifted and has had the oils removed for it so that it is shelf stable, and then it's good for up to a year. So that's really important too, because if you're someone like me who has gluten sensitivities, if I go and just get a regular all-purpose flour, if it's not straight like this one is, with just straight with the einkorn, if it's got those other things added into it, those other types of flours and different grains, then it can really bother it. So I wanted to make sure that you knew that this all-purpose flour is just straight einkorn that has just been sifted and then it's shelf stable because it's had the oils removed. So wanted to make sure we were clear on that. Do wheat berries work for sprouts? Absolutely. So you can sprout these, right? And you can sprout them if you want to do sprouted flour. So that's where you would, let them just start to sprout. And then you would dehydrate them back, and that's how you get sprouted flour. So you can do that, or you can just grow them into sprouts for you to eat. So you've got some greens, you can eat them as sprouts like that, or you can use and sprout them to create fodder if you've got chickens or livestock. Then that's another way of supplementing their feed without having to go and purchase it, and you're giving them fresh greens. So wheat berries are really, really versatile when it comes to different food sources in your home and even with your livestock. So yes, they have many, many different ways that they can be used. Yeah, guys, so I wanted to let you know too, there is a coupon. So finding the ancient grains in your regular stores, they're definitely making more of a comeback. So there's more awareness, more people are starting to use them, but it can still be really difficult to find, especially to find the wheat berries. But even the flour, when it comes to ancient grains, so spelt and einkorn, like I don't have that. I have not found that, I should say, anywhere, even within an hour drive radius of me. So I always order mine online. So Einkorn.com gave us a special coupon to get free shipping on the einkorn berries. And you can grab that in the show notes. So it'll tell you, and it expires the end of June. So you can get the coupon code and the exact, all the fun stuff on that in our show notes at melissanorris.com/einkorn. And you'll be able to also get Julie from Einkorn.com gave us 6 must-have Einkorn recipes. So they're recipes that she's developed specifically for Einkorn flour, so you don't have to worry about doing any type of conversion rates. And it's 6 different recipes, some really fun recipes. There's crackers, there's soups, there's all kinds of things in there. So that you can use the Einkorn flour and figure out how to bake with that. And you've got some recipes that are set and ready to go. So you can get that for free too as well in the show notes. So I want to thank you guys for joining me. I'm always super excited to talk about this stuff. So have an awesome day, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and I want to extend a special invitation to invite you to grab your free copy of my Ultimate Home Food Preservation Guide. You can go to melissaknorris.com/preservation guide, and I got the link for you. And it shows you 6 different ways to preserve food at home, over 135 resources. It'll help you pick the right equipment, which is best for you and where you're at right now. Root cellaring techniques, how to use oil and alcohol to preserve food at home. And of course, one of my favorites involves canning. We'll be talking about water bath and pressure canning, how to stay safe with both of those, recipes, tutorials, and it's all waiting for you to begin preserving your food at home to build your self-sufficiency, save a ton of money, and be healthy by knowing exactly what is in your food. So what are you waiting for? Go grab your free copy right now.